Blitz is the newest movie by Steve McQueen, and this should be getting on Apple TV Plus, is just had a very short run in theaters. Steve McQueen, Small Axe, not too long ago, like the 5-movie series that he put out in like 4 years ago, which was fantastic, about the lives of different Black people within London in different time periods and different groups and different settings. That movie was fantastic. He also did, what else did he do? 12 Years a Slave. He did Hunger, if I remember correctly. He's done a bunch of other things. Widows, I think, was also him. And this movie, at first look, it looks like a very, very old-fashioned type movie. And in some ways it is, and in some ways it isn't. It's called Blitz. And it's obviously taking place during the Blitz in London and in England, where nearly every night bombers would fly over from Germany, or German bombers would fly over, probably at that point stationed in France. I don't know the exact history of that, other than know they were getting buzz bombed, and they were getting bombed every night. Sirens would go off. People would race and run for shelters and try to keep from getting killed, because obviously their world was getting destroyed like on a nightly basis. That's the setting of this, but the story was not what I expected. I expected it to be either like Hope and Glory, which it is a nice pairing with Hope and Glory. Hope and Glory was an old movie. I want to say John Borman movie from the 80s, where it's kind of showing the way children can find joy in the bombed out rubble and kind of lost children kind of a thing, the bombed out rubble of London. This movie, on the other hand, is from the kid's point of view, and this is almost a kid's movie, like a young teen movie that's not a superhero movie, a young teen movie that is actually got stakes and is actually serious and actually expects the younger audience to be able to take something like this, which would seem so boring and I'm guessing really hard to get young kids to watch it. But it is very, very good. I think young kids did want to watch it. That being said, for an adult, just go into it with that attitude. It is from the point of view mostly of a kid. During this time, apparently what they did is it was so dangerous for the area for kids that the government offered this thing where essentially you could, get your kid registered with them. They basically put them on trains and took them out to the country, and the kids would live out in the country so they would be safe. And of course, in that way, families were split up a whole bunch. And in this case, you have I can never say her name right. Rita, played by Saoirse Ronan. And I'll say her name, Saoirse Ronan. I can never say it right. And you have George, her son, played by Elliott Heffernan. Now, it is important to know he is a mixed race, because obviously he's going to be dealt with a little differently in London, even now probably, but especially back then, to be a mixed race child in London. And it's not like it's a huge call out in this movie, but there are just interactions consistently throughout the movie that are different in some way because of him being mixed race. And he's seeing the world that way too. And you see his change in time over suspicion and not knowing how people are going to deal with him. And it's partly on that. Partly because he's a kid, and partly because he's a kid of mixed race. And you never know exactly how the world is going to treat him. But the basic concept is this. This is the great part of this movie. And the part I did not expect. The concept is she gets put on the train. His mom's like, I'm so sorry. I can't wait to see you again, but we need to keep you safe. But I don't have to leave. Do I have to leave, Mom? Do I have to leave? Of course, the kid's not going to want to leave his mother, especially during wartime. And he doesn't have a father because his father got deported quite a while ago. You see a little flashback on how that happened. So he's essentially just with his mother and his grandfather. More on that in a minute. And he gets on the train, and he's pretty well out into getting out into the countryside, and he's not having it. First of all, he told his mom he hated her. He was angry at her when they parted, and that weighed on him a lot, because obviously he didn't want to leave his mom saying he hated her. He was just mad that they had to be split up, and he was hurt and scared. So he jumps off the train and he starts heading back, trying to get back to London and back to his mom and back to his house. So that is the crux of this movie. It's a journey movie. And when I found out that this movie was a journey movie, that made me so happy, because we don't get a lot of those these days. And essentially, this whole movie is him traveling and meeting various people, different kinds of people, some good, some bad, to try to get back to his mom. And the other side of that, of course, you're seeing her life. She's like works in a factory, all the things that she's doing. This is a really excellent movie and great. And it's not a small movie. And I felt like it was going to be a small movie, but there are some big sequences in here where, I mean, you can even say action sequences to some degree where, you know, half the city's on fire and planes are crashing around it down and bombs are going off. And there are various sequences that are pretty bravura, you know, like big stuff that you wouldn't necessarily expect have to be in a movie like this. But of course, in the center of it all is you're following him. And each time he encounters a new person, like, is this person going to help him and be great for him? Or is this person going to be a danger to him? I heard a lot of people, a couple of reviews I read complained about a part in the middle of this movie. There is a sequence that is very Dickensian, very, very Dickensian, but I kind of loved it. And I liked the fact that there was something a little bit over the top in the middle of this movie, story-wise, narrative-wise, and I had a lot of fun with it. It's only about a 20-minute section of this movie. This movie's 2 hours long, about a 20-minute section. I loved it. Also, there's a sequence, once again, not describing it in a way that you'll know what's going on. There's a sequence where in a nightclub, and it's kind of somewhat of a oneer, where you're watching this entire nightclub performance, this entire nightclub, and there's a progression of what happens in that sequence that is fantastic, and it leads to part of the Dickensian story, which I also thought was fantastic. Almost a nightmare dream moment in the middle of this pretty realistic movie, but I think this movie is quite fantastic. Very simple concept, very human story, historical, but also vibrant, and I love this movie quite a bit. I'm going to go 5 stars on Blitz. Check it out. You can all check it out too. I think this is really accessible, and I think this is great. It's a great, great movie.